Today is seed starting day for me, and I'm so relieved to be getting this done. It's been one hold up after the other for the last couple of weeks. I am actually going to be posting a video here very soon, kind of the ins and outs of seed starting and some different options, and just kind of talking about all of that stuff for those of you who are like, I don't know when, I don't know how, and covering all of that in a really comprehensive video. But that's not what I'm doing today, because today I'm actually going to start the majority of my spring seeds that need to be started inside. So I figured I would just kind of like show you guys today what I'm doing, and then I will give you more information in a comprehensive video here in a couple of days. I've been going through my seeds really for the last couple of weeks. I've started making my lists of what I want to start for the summer garden, what tomatoes and peppers, what cucumbers, what all of the things that I'm going to plant. But now it's really time for me to get my early spring things sown, the things that need to be started indoors. And I'm kind of having a hard time deciding exactly what all I want to plant, because there's still a lot in my garden. Actually, let's go down there and take a look, and then we'll come back here and discuss what it is I've settled on starting today. There's a lot of stuff still growing in the garden for it to be the end of January. I still have a good bit of cabbage that has overwintered, and quite a bit of broccoli left. I am going to sow some more broccoli, but I don't think I'm going to start any more cabbages. I don't really want to dedicate any more garden space to that for the spring. I do have a couple of plans I would really like to show you guys. The wind is crazy right now, but let's take a look and see if I can show you the plans we have. For the most part, all of the existing trellises that we've already got up in the garden are staying the same. Hey, Nosy. Over here, however, these two short beds that run perpendicular to the others, we're actually going to put in more trellis walls like these that I like to grow tomatoes on, that go all the way the length of the bed. And we're going to put these in here because I'm actually expanding the amount of space that I have for tomatoes. Last year I had a couple of little pieces in here, but I'd like the fullness of these beds for one side of them to be dedicated to tomatoes, and then on this other side we'll be putting in pepper plants, eggplants, and different flowers, other good companions to grow right next to the tomatoes. Now this bed that will be a tomato bed, as you can see, it is currently filled with cabbages and kale. Around the time that I'm putting tomatoes in the ground here, as well as peppers and other tender things, that'll probably be the end of April, and that'll be about when these are all ready or done being harvested. Obviously I'm making my plan for spring right now, but I need to have in mind what I want to do for summer to make sure that when it comes time to sow the garden in late April for summer, I don't have that space taken up by something that's not ready to harvest that I planted for spring. Now I like to have all of the arch trellises covered for summer. I love using these things for melons, noodle beans specifically, but any sort of green beans do pretty well on them. And also cucumbers. Those are my favorite things to grow on arch trellises because those things really fill out nicely and they cover to the top. Using these, you really want to utilize them as a point of architectural beauty in the garden. So I try to keep in mind when I'm planting on them that I want something that's going to be full and lush looking and really create nice canopy look. Now last year I started this first trellis right here on this corner of my garden. It's the one that I see from my window, and I was so excited in the spring that I came down here and I planted all of my spring stuff right here. It was so encouraging in like March when it all started to come up, and April when it was all full, and everything else was pretty much dead, but I could look out that window and I could see this big, lush, beautiful section of my garden. But then the problem was that the end of April, when I sowed all the rest of this garden and all of these things started petering out, I then had to tear out all of it, and it was just completely bare. And then I re-sowed it and it was lush again a few months later. Sitting, George. Why does he do this? He's seriously rubbing up against this, making the camera move. And you know what? He ignores me the rest of the time. So this year I'm actually going to be spacing out my early season stuff, planting a little here and a little there. So as it dies away, I can replant those places with something that will grow well in the summer, but I don't have any big bald spots in the garden. My gosh, this is going to be awful to edit. Every 10th word is No, I don't want you to scare me. We'll talk about the things that I'm going to start in the greenhouse here in a second and get out of this wind. However, there are some things that will be direct sown in the garden. Here in my zone 7B, I can direct sow my frost hardy varieties like peas. I could direct sow my lettuces. I can direct sow a lot of flowers like calendula. I can do that in the middle of February. So right now is the time for me to be really deciding where am I going to put things for summer, so I need to leave those spaces open. Like I'm adding these extra trellises for tomatoes. I need to know that those are going to be there so I don't fill those spaces. And I need to be refreshing my garden beds. We're actually going to be getting a load of compost as soon as we can. I've got some that I've made, but it's not enough to cover my entire garden. And I'm going to add 3 or 4 inches of compost to the top of all of my garden beds to plant for spring. I like to direct sow root vegetables, so all of those things will go directly into the garden about 4 weeks before my last frost date. 4 to 6 weeks they can handle that. Now they may take a little bit longer germinating whenever it's cold like that, but the seeds will be okay in the ground. The thing with broccolis and cabbages and cauliflowers, if I don't start them inside and I do direct sow them, by the time they get to the point of actually forming a head, they just flower so fast that you don't often get to actually harvest anything from them, because by the time they reach that point it's already too warm outside, because our spring, you know, goes by really quickly. So I want to start those things in here to get a head start on putting them outside so that hopefully I can harvest from them before it gets too warm. Another thing that I'm going to go ahead and sow inside as some of my flowers. Specifically, I've got a couple of varieties of pansies, and I'm going to experiment with starting calendula. Now, I typically have in the past direct sown calendula. It is frost hardy, so you can sow it before. I sowed it in February last year. It did great. I got a lot of harvest off of it. I harvested a lot of the blossoms to use in skincare, putting them in oils and different salves. However, this year I thought, well, I'll go ahead and try starting them inside, and so if I get to transfer already established plants, then you know, I'll just get that harvest sooner. Some other things that I am starting in here today are radicchios and some pak choys, because I didn't grow these in the fall, or I planted some. My goats actually got in my garden and ate a lot of them. I would like to get a harvest of these. So their flavor is going to be a little sweeter if they're grown in the cooler weather, so that is my prerogative on starting these now, is that I would like to grow them as much as possible before it gets hot. And I'm also starting some nice lettuces like this flashy butter gem, as well as a Marvel of 4 Seasons. Those you could also direct sow, but I'm looking for a little bit of a head start. Now I will direct sow my baby greens right into the garden beds in the middle of February, and they'll come up quickly enough and I'll be harvesting them early enough that I'll get several harvests off of those before it starts getting too warm for those to taste good. Most of the things that I'm starting in here I could just direct sow a month and a half from now. However, because our hot weather comes on so hard and fast in the late spring, I'm just hoping to extend how much I get to harvest from these things by planting them now. Today I'm using a tray with these 2.5-inch pots, as well as a tray that I've filled with these small nursery starter pots. I got all of this stuff from the Bootstrap Farmer online, which I really like his stuff. He's also where I got these colorful trays and the ones that you see behind me here. This is my first year to order from him and use his products. So far I'm really impressed. Now most of them are made out of this really hard, heavy-duty plastic, and it lasts. It's got a 2-year warranty on it. And so for me, if I'm going to use plastic products here, I do like them being reusable. Now, these the little pots are not the same plastic. I would say they're probably a higher quality than what I've bought at like garden centers before. These are probably a little bit thicker than that, and they seem to hold up pretty well. The reason why I went ahead and got these is because I'm selling a lot of plant starts, and so I wanted something that looked a little more professional. However, in the past I've always used red solo cups. I will tell you more about that in the seed starting video later this week. As of today, I'm actually only going to be starting one tray here, as well as one tray with the 6 cell starters. I'm just using potting soil in these. This is just regular potting soil, not to be confused with garden soil, which is too dense to start seeds in. A lot of people suggest a seed starting mix or something that's lighter, but I've found that a nice well-mixed potting soil that has perlite and peat moss already mixed into it works just fine for starting seeds. I've also got these little markers. This was a 500 pack. One of our sweet viewers bought this for us off of our Amazon wish list. I wanted to give these a try. Again, I wanted something that was streamlined because of the fact that I'm going to be taking plants to plant sales. In the past, I've just used popsicle sticks. They work just fine. They do get a little blurry towards the end, and that's why I was wanting to do this instead. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through my seeds and write the varieties on these markers, go ahead and stick them in the pots, and then tuck the seeds in. I'm going to go ahead and water my soil. Not a ton, but just getting it moist. Now I can just plant my seeds in this, and I don't have to water it after they're in there, possibly displacing them. I've also moved this tray over here to the other side because that's where my heater is. And this side of my greenhouse is just a little bit warmer, and it also is getting a little more sunlight, I've noticed. So I want to give these seeds the best chance possible to get started well. I usually put just a couple of seeds in each little thing to make sure that I get at least one that germinates. Now once they all come up, I'll thin them out and just leave one sprout growing per container. So I just goofed, and I'll just take it as a teaching moment. I just dropped this pack of black pansy seeds into this big tub of water, and there are way more in here than I can plant. Now, I actually think I might have grabbed them out fast enough that they might not get wet, but it's probably pretty iffy. I'll probably just do this to be on the safe side. So if you ever have an instance where a whole seed package gets wet, it's all is not lost, don't freak out. I have accidentally left seeds that I was mid-sowing out in the garden, and then they got rained on, or my kids dropped them in the water or whatever. All you have to do is, I mean, you want to do it quickly when you find them and they're still soaking wet. Get like a paper towel or a paper plate and just lay them all flat in one layer out on that. Make sure you mark it so you know what's where. And then once they're dry, just put them in a dry envelope or a plastic bag, and they'll still grow. I've done that multiple times. Didn't lose the seeds. I don't know if it affected the germination rate. I never tested it like specifically to get a percentage, but if your seeds get wet, don't just cry over them. It's not spilled milk. You can save it. For me, the moment that seeds start germinating is like the most exciting thing. I never get tired of it, so I'm very excited for when these guys start popping up. And from here on out, it's going to be a lot of seed starting. I will start some here more in a couple of weeks, and then in the middle of February is when I typically start all of my frost tender things, my tomatoes and peppers and eggplants and tomatillos and ground cherries and just all of the fun stuff for the garden this summer. You do want to do that 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost, so that's why I'll be doing it then. I am heating my greenhouse to make sure those things get off to a good start, but again, I'll talk more about that later. As of right now, I'm going to head back in my house, put these seeds back into their safe dry places, and I'll be keeping an eye on these things, making sure that they stay warm, making sure that the soil stays moist but not sopping wet, and just waiting for them to show their sweet little heads and join the garden. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. I bless you. Until next time. Oh, Kitten George, what an adventurer. Are you working? All right, well, back to it.